I'm in Brooklyn, New York, scouting out some graffiti someone was doing, but across the street we're at this really awesome, I don't know, what is this place? Building 92?
Yeah, it's part of the Navy Yard. It's a building, they have a museum here about the Navy Yard of the Brooklyn. It's pretty cool.
Neat place, yeah, and your shop is just right across the street. Chris owns Propel Bikes. He's got a bunch of cool kind of imports and higher end stuff, so I like to stop by to do reviews. And today we're looking at the Orbea, what was this model again? It's the
Katu-E 10.
Katu-E 10, interesting name. Yeah, and it's a cool setup. It's rather compact, but very capable as like a cargo bike. You can see that the steering here is completely separate from this basket. I don't know what this is rated at, but to have two mounting points right here and to have it, you know, this combined with possibly a rear rack, we do have Bosses, and then that center double leg kickstand, that's a really capable setup for hauling stuff around the city where you might not have as much space in your apartment. The 20-inch wheels, that's what we're looking at here. These are Kenda, I believe they're compact. They've got reflective sidewalls. They're a little bit thicker, and by being smaller diameter, they're gonna be stronger. 36 hole, by the way, front and rear. So that's something, even if all else was held the same, just having a smaller diameter wheel tends to be a little bit more robust, which is great for a platform like this where you might be hauling. All aluminum frame. I believe it only comes in this one size, and it's a mid-step, so you know, a full high-step diamond would be up here. Do they call it mixedy? Is that what this kind of frame would be, or?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I guess, because normally like a standard top tube will come to here.
Yeah.
And oftentimes a mixedy frame will come down a little bit lower, but
easier to approach.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And to stand over. So whether you're super tall or like me, I'm only 5'9", you know, I'm not super tall. I can easily stand over this thing and hold it if I was at a stop sign and I had a bunch of gear or puppies in here and I needed to keep them steady. So I like that. It's a good setup, and not only does it have cargo hauling potential, but it's going to keep you dry and clean with these SKS fenders, plastic. You know, they feel pretty solid to me. Sometimes you have steel and they get scratched and then they start to rust, or aluminum adds a little bit of weight. This bike with the rack, which is included, only weighs 51 pounds, which is, yeah, it's okay. That's not bad. And speaking of steel, this is a steel fork. Tends to be a little bit tougher and a little bit of vibration dampening quality with that. I don't know, do you have anything to say about steel forks versus aluminum, Chris?
Yeah, I think the thing is a fork can be under a lot of pressure, and I think having a little bit of give to it, whereas maybe an aluminum fork might be more likely to crack. You might need a little bit more material in order to achieve the same result.
Okay, thank you. So that's cool. The basket is aluminum alloy, and you might have noticed we've got these Spinninga lights integrated. I've got them turned on right now. They run off that main battery pack, which is really cool. So you can turn them on or off independently, but then there's the light bulb button up here on the display. The display is backlit. I don't know if you can see it. It's starting to become evening time here. And then a second light back here. So you've really got just a lot of utility built into this bike. And we're not done. There's one more thing. It's kind of cool. This is the AXA Solid Plus. They call that a cafe lock. And the way that it works is there's a key in here. And you're gonna do it? Yeah. Look at, oh, I need to move the wheel. You see that? There's a metal bar that slides through. So if someone tried to walk away with your bike, they couldn't. You know, they'd have to pick it up, and 51 pounds is kind of a lot. You'd be walking down the street with a bike and people would be like, what's going on? And that key, I believe, does that work for this battery pack?
Yeah.
Can we try that? So I'm gonna turn the bike off, come over here to the battery pack.
So
this is
one thing to note is that you do actually have to lock the cafe lock in order to remove the key from the lock. So what we'll do here is loosen this, remove the key. It does come with two keys, so you do have that ability, and then you just remove the battery.
Wow. There. Yeah, so there's just,
and that's it.
You know, one key. Like you said, there's an extra that you get, but you really only have to keep track of one key. This is 5.4 pounds, not super heavy, and it's got that loop at the front, so it's easy to carry. You hear that click? That's the important thing. I was waiting for that. You want to make sure that battery's clicked in. It's got a little LED charge level indicator on the side. It can be charged on or off the bike. Bosch just does an excellent job with their drive systems. You can see from the side that most of the weight is low and center. And that's going to help you use the front and the rear for cargo and just keep the bike steadier and more balanced. Having that top tube over the battery helps you to not kick it or step on it. Unfortunately, there's no room for bottle cage bosses. You could add one maybe back here on the seat post or hanging off, or just toss your bottle in that basket at the front. So there are a lot of options. But oh, hey, that's a good idea. A lot of times they have the ones that are clamps, like a clamp here. Good call, Chris. I would love to see in the future maybe they put some bosses there and you could have a side mounting bottle.
Right.
Sometimes the aftermarket ones, when it's clamped on, they can slip around versus the bosses. You know, room for a little improvement, but otherwise I think this is very kind of a cool and unique bike. I love that they managed to squeeze in a plastic chain cover because I'm riding with my pants tonight. You don't want to get those dragging on the chain. The chain is very tight and maybe a little bit stronger, sturdier than if this was using a traditional derailleur and cog set. It's only got one sprocket in the rear, one sprocket up front, and all the gears are inside. That's a Shimano Alpine 8-speed internally geared hub. They tend to weigh a little bit more, but they stay clean. They can be shifted at standstill. To get them to actually shift, you do have to ease off a little bit if you're putting a lot of pressure on it. I think he's doing it right now. You're shifting gears.
Yeah.
Nice. So it's happening. You can see that little piece moving. That's really neat. And if the bike tips, if you're shoving this in a closet or in a bike rack, there's not as much stuff hanging out that's vulnerable and wires and stuff. It's all tucked away. Love that they included a slap guard, even though the chain isn't going to be bouncing around, probably not going to fall off as easily as if it was a traditional drivetrain. Plastic pedals here. These are VP. Not bad. A little bit more surface area than some of the pedals I see, and the nubs are pretty aggressive, so you shouldn't slip off as if it was the rubberized texture stuff that tends to be a little more slippery. So I appreciate that. I think I mentioned the reflective sidewalls and the lights earlier, but to me that's really important. The bike comes in 8 different colors, including like a bone white and silver and stuff. So if you really want to be seen, those are the brighter colors. What was this one called, Chris? Do you remember?
You know, honestly, I'm not sure exactly. It's a blue, but
their names were really cool. If you're back at the website, I recorded all that stuff back at my website too, just to help guide you. I called Orbea and was asking them about the battery stats because Bosch now has a Power Pack 500. It's a little bit bigger. Of course, that costs more, and so I think they were going with like the traditional 400. That's still a very capable battery for getting this bike along. You can get the 500, and it'll fit with the same interface here, which is nice. MSRP on this bike is $29.99, so we're looking at a $3,000 bike. You know, for something that's compact, pretty capable for hauling cargo. This might be one of your few options out there. Ergonomic grips, hydraulic disc brakes from Shimano. Were we saying 160 millimeter? Yeah. 160 millimeter rotors front and rear. That's pretty capable, and because the wheel diameter is smaller, I think you get a little bit more stopping power from that. This is a purpose-built e-bike with all the cables, well, not all of them, not this one, but quite a few cables are internally routed. I guess that's just your disc brake line. Maybe it's exposed so you can bleed the brakes easier, replace that. Do you remember the seat post diameter, Chris?
It's a 31.6, 400 millimeter length.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember it being longer. Yeah, so 31.6, that's pretty standard, but it's a little bit fatter, sturdier. And then 400 millimeter, I mean, it goes pretty far down. So if you're a taller rider, you're going to be able to boost that up and still fit, even though the bike looks a little small.
Right, and with the quill stem, you can go up higher as well. So you do have a certain level of adjustability with this bike.
It's a good point. Yeah, you loosen this, and then you can slide it up or down, and there's like a wedge inside there that when you tighten this, it pushes the wedge out and squeezes itself. So whatever, you can mess with it. But quill stems are neat that way. And I like that it's solid versus adjustable angle, but that it's a riser and that we've got these mid-rise bars, because that is going to allow you to tilt them forward and get a little bit more reach if you're a taller rider, or bring them back and just have a comfortable setup. All in all. So yeah, the Bosch motor, come back down here. This is 250 watt nominal, but it's kind of confusing. That's what they say in Europe, but then in the US, a lot of people say 350 watt. It definitely peaks over 500 watts. 63 Newton meters of torque, very capable, very responsive as well. So this isn't a bike with a throttle or anything. This is class 1, which means it's legal in more places. And it's measuring your rear wheel speed. There's a little sensor right there. It's measuring your pedal cadence and your pedal torque 1,000 times per second. It's just awesome. You'll be able to see it when we get on and ride a little bit later. When you shift gears, it actually measures chain tension, and so it's supposed to ease off a little bit. They call that shift sensing. And I think this year or recently they enabled it for geared hubs.
Right, there's an update with the most recent Bosch update. They have a little bit better shift sensing on the hub motors, because it's definitely different than what you would normally find on a derailleur system.
Yeah.
So there's actually different software in there for hub motors.
Well, he means internally geared hubs.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, that's
right.
That's what we're talking about back here.
For hub gears, and basically what it is there's little pockets where it allows the shift to actually kick in. So
that's cool.
Makes it easier, but you do still have to let off the pedaling a little bit as you're shifting.
Little pockets. We got this cool bell going on. The display is adjustable, but they've over tightened it, so I can't adjust it. I don't want to break it. It is removable too, so we can turn it off. Take this off easily along with the battery. So if you had to park this in a rough neighborhood, you could charge it, you could keep it from getting scratched or getting sun, weather worn. On the side here, there's a USB port, so you can take this rubber thing up so it can actually charge cell devices like phones or MP3 players and things. That's kind of cool, along with those lights I mentioned earlier. And then we've got a remote button pad over here, so you can shift, well, not shift, but adjust your power level and cycle through some of the menus without taking your hand off the grip. You know, with this bike, you do have to look down a little bit more just where the display is mounted, but it's big, it's easy to read. So I'm gonna power it on. See it light up a little bit. Got 5 bars on the battery. Speed, it's in miles per hour, but if you hold reset and I, you get into the settings, you can change it to kilometers. And then we've got a chart on the right that goes like power. You can see a little graph when we ride, and then 4 levels of assist. So I'm gonna go plus, eco, tour, sport, turbo. I use turbo, sport, and probably tour the most. Eco basically just takes off the feeling of, oh, this bike's heavy, it's electric. So yeah, tour, but you get a good range by not overdoing it with sport and turbo. And of course, you can just ride it like a normal bike. Because this is a completely rigid frame with those relatively slick kind of hybrid tires, it coasts pretty well. You're not going to lose a lot of efficiency through bobbing or anything. But on the way over here, I mean, the top speed on this is 20 miles per hour. And when you're going over bumpy stuff, you do feel it a little bit more, even with the ergonomic grips and stuff. It's just a, you know, it's abrasive sometimes, and your gear might be rattling around. That's one consideration I had. It's the trade-off when you want something compact but stiff. And then right here on the seat post, remember earlier I was saying, oh, that's pretty standard. You could get a thud buster or a body float, and you could take some of the vibration and jar off by replacing that seat post with an aftermarket part. Okay, so let's get back to the display. There's this I button as well as the lights. So boom, lights are on. But this I button cycles through a bunch of different readouts down here, and it's replicated over there as well. So I'm gonna go the odometer, trip distance, clock, max speed, average speed, trip time, and then range is really cool because it's dynamically estimating based on how much battery capacity remains and what level of pedal assist you're in, how far it thinks you can go. And it calculates this based on the last miles of riding that you've done. Let's see what it thinks. So based on my riding, if we're in eco mode, it says, hey, you can go 34 miles, which that's way lower than I would expect. And you should be able to go like, I don't know, 60 miles or something. Tour, sport, and turbo. So turbo way down to 12 miles. So I think what's happening here is this battery isn't completely full, and whoever rode this before I was on it might have been heavier and hauling more stuff. That's the beauty of having a dynamic range estimation. So yeah, there you go. Or over time, the battery starts to wear out. Your range is it's gonna be a little bit less. So way better than just having 5 ticks to work with. And then there is walk mode. So if we press this top button here, it says, oh, maybe this one doesn't have it enabled. Well, let's try this. Holding walk mode. Nope. That's interesting. Some of the bikes I've seen, it's 2017 right now, and some of them have had walk mode enabled and others have not. That might need a software update or something, but I'm excited about that because if your bike is full of gear and you're in a place where walking is the best option, not riding, that walk mode could be really useful, especially for a bike like this. So, you know, ask your dealer. Chris, do you have anything to add before we take it out and go for a ride?
Just one point on the walk mode. The 2017 motors have the hardware that's capable to enable the walk mode, but it's really up to the OEMs or the manufacturers to enable that. this particular bike kind of came out, started in 2016, so it's possible that this might still have the 2016
firmware
motor
or
and firmware. So I think it's quite likely that that's probably the situation here.
You tend to get these bikes a little early. Is this a European company, Orbea, or?
This is a European company. It's actually a company from Spain, and
cool.
They're really well known over there, and they have some presence in the U.S. They've been around for a little while with non-electric bikes, and they're just recently introducing an electric bike. So it's
okay. Yeah,
cool.
You had another one from them too. Do you remember what that was called?
Yeah, they have a bunch of different models. We had another one called the Orbea Wild, which is their mountain bike version, and and they have some other kind of street versions as well.
What made you want to carry this bike, and who's been interested so far in the shop?
I just thought it was interesting. It's $3,000 price point, compact bike for a place like New York City. When people are tight on space, it's good to have that option. And having this cargo carrying ability and everything else, it's kind of interesting. So
yeah, we shouldn't or maybe undersell this. You can add racks to a lot of bikes,
right.
But to have something that's sturdy, that doesn't tip when you steer and stuff, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, to have the accommodations on the frame. I mean, there's ways to retrofit to other frames, but not really in a clean way. And this does it in a pretty clean fashion, and it has a place to mount the light underneath.
Oh, it's not going to
here,
get blocked.
so,
like that's the other thing. It's
kind of these little details that are thought out beforehand that do make a difference.
We should say though that it doesn't. The light doesn't steer when you steer. I mean, it's not a huge deal because usually pretty quickly you're pointing in that direction. But
right.
I want to be like, is there anything you don't like about this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, the quill stem, it does give you some adjustability, but really the standard these days is more so the threadless stem that we see on most mountain bikes and that sort of thing.
Okay.
It just ends up giving you a little bit of a more firm, responsiveness and a little bit of a stiffer ride where you need it really in the handling.
Well, thanks for giving. Yeah. Anything else, or should we hop out?
Yeah, let's take for a ride.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I don't want to rush you. Actually, I'm looking at the battery on my camera and it's like almost out. So get out there before it wears down. Maybe we can just cross the street and ride back towards the shop and do some trade-offs. Yeah, I'm in turbo mode. I tend to ride in the highest modes for these reviews so you can hear the motor. There we go. Okay, so this should be the perfect point of view to hear the motor and to see the shifting happening when you take a little ride. Here's the display. You can see a little bit of the blue background going on, the light. It seems like it's kind of shining up, probably designed to be more here. They might have just not been able to do it based on the fenders. I did notice a little bit of scraping. That might have been the disc brake. But yeah, this is probably a compromise. You can see that the reflective surface is angled at like a 45-degree angle right there. Oh, and then one of the other things I liked is that you can shift by pressing in or out. So it's a pretty dynamic shifter. Gosh, I keep hitting that bell. Decent, but yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to for those internally geared hubs. And we're off. At first it can be a little funky when you turn, but the basket doesn't turn. There's the little power chart I was talking about before. And even shift recommendation. You see that arrow? So that arrow is telling me, you know, hey, you might want to shift up to make it easier for the motor to be more efficient. Let's climb. Can we climb this hill, Chris? Not a whole lot of rattling going on. You know, that basket is really solid. And this street isn't, it's not the smoothest street around. Here's a little bump. You know, not bad. Chris, you gonna give me a hand and ride that one, and I'll trade off and get some third person perspectives? And we're on the extra big sidewalk here. Looking good. How tall are you?
About 5'9".
It's 5'9".
Legs than you, I think, though.
Yeah, it's looking good. See that brake light? Well, it's been fun riding this thing around the neighborhood. Thank you so much for letting me check this out, Chris, and for sharing your thoughts on it. For the full written review on the Orbea, what is it called again?
Katu-E 10.
The Katu-E 10. It's such a cool name. I like that. I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there. Ride safe.